Right then, the four tires of the car in front exploded. Strange popping sounds filled the air. The first man grabbed his mouth, groaning in pain. He writhed as Veronica caused all his dental fillings to burst out. Reading from the diary of Tomás Albuquerque, September 2021, entries. We left Cordrex Alvec, deep in the forest of Ilhabela, early in the morning on September 21, 2021. We walked through the woods until we reached the coast at Saco de Sombrio. There, we managed to board a yacht coming from Santa Catarina. The crew was very friendly and dropped us off at Gwinnett. From there, we took a motorized canoe to Paraquay. While still on the yacht, Veronica asked about what was happening in the world. I told her, when we get to the city, we'll check the news. She laughed and replied, these days, newspapers are no more than sectarian pamphlets. Nothing could be further from the truth than what they publish. Thanks to the meditation of the 8 Pictunris, we no longer needed the Shakana. We could sense what people were feeling, both nearby and across the planet. We could see that generally, life was still worth living, but we could also feel the intense suffering of individuals. It was overwhelming and required great care not to lose our sanity. We decided to focus on those close to us and see if we could help someone nearby. We soon sensed the anguish of a woman from San Sebastián, whose young daughter had been kidnapped. Veronica became very agitated and couldn't wait to get there and solve the situation. We already knew where the girl was being held. Veronica was so restless that she refused to stop and eat. We went straight to the ferry, heading to the woman's house in San Sebastián, which was on the way to the location where the girl was being held captive. When we arrived, a shirtless boy about 9 years old opened the door and immediately, without us asking, said, "My mom's crying because they took my sister." We went inside. His mother was on the floor, crying desperately. Veronica hugged her tightly and promised, "Your daughter will be back before nightfall. I promise." The woman calmed down so much that she fell asleep. She hadn't slept in 5 days. We took an Uber willing to drive us down a dirt road to near the hideout. The driver agreed to wait for us to make the return trip. We walked the rest of the way on foot. We arrived at a small farm deep in the woods. We knew Claudinha, the girl, was being held captive there. Veronica called out, "Is anyone home? We need help. Please come out." It didn't take long before a rough-looking man came out of the house, clearly suspicious, and asked what we were doing so far out in the woods. After confirming we were alone, he insisted we come inside. When we hesitated, he pulled a pistol from his pocket and, without pointing it directly at us, said he wanted to talk inside. Veronica, her voice full of fury, replied, "You will deeply regret the evil you've done to this girl and her family." Tense and unsure of what to say, the man raised the pistol and pointed it at Veronica. At that moment, a second man came out with a shotgun and said angrily, "Get inside the house now! You're never leaving this place!" But before they could act, strange popping sounds filled the air. The first man grabbed his mouth, groaning in pain. He writhed as Veronica caused all his dental fillings to burst out. The second man, stunned by what was happening, shouted, "Who are you? What are you doing? You'll pay for this." He pointed the shotgun at Veronica, clearly ready to fire. But she said, "You need more light in your life. Why don't you look at the sun?" The man immediately turned his wide eyes to the blazing sun and stared at it, unblinking, for several seconds. I rushed to force him to cover his eyes with his own hands to prevent him from going blind. I shouted, "Stop it, Veronica! Have you forgotten we can't do this?" She screamed at me, furious, overcome by rage. She wanted to punish those men for the suffering they had caused. Both men ended up sprawled on the muddy ground, shaking and drooling as if they were having seizures. Veronica was still extremely angry. If it weren't for my efforts to calm her, I don't know what she might have done to those men. Nothing would have been left of them. She justified herself by saying she was acting in self-defense, but I could see her drive was much more than that. Carefully, Veronica picked up the girl and calmed her down. We returned to the waiting car, and in less than 2 hours, we fulfilled the promise to reunite the girl with her mother. As we were about to leave Maria Helena's house after returning her daughter, several cars filled with armed men pulled up around the house. The men got out and surrounded the place. They were clearly there to take Claudinha back. She was the daughter of a rival gang leader, and to settle the score with us. At that moment, Claudinha had a nervous breakdown and started screaming desperately. Before I could react, Veronica stormed out of the house, consumed by a deep, fiery anger that made her seem like a completely different person. She looked at the men and shouted, "Have you ever heard of a haunting? Or a poltergeist? Well, today, you're about to find out what it's like." Right then, the four tires of the car in front exploded. Some of the men closest to the car panicked and ran off. The others, who didn't quite understand what was happening yet, stayed, but they were clearly terrified and confused by Veronica's complete lack of fear in the face of their weapons. That's when I realized what Veronica was doing. She was heating up the fuel tanks of their cars. The smell of gasoline was already overwhelming. She was about to blow everything up. I grabbed her, desperate, and begged her not to do it. I asked for 5 minutes to handle the situation and said, "Veronica, you're drawing too much attention. The 9 will come for us. You need to calm down." All of this happened in just a few seconds. I managed to calm her down. She went back inside, sat on the couch, and with her eyes still burning with fury said, "Handle this, or I'll turn them all to gas. I'll reduce them to atoms." I knew she was still deeply hurt by the loss of her daughter Liriel, and seeing Claudinha cry brought all that pain rushing back. As soon as we were inside, Maria Helena's phone rang. It was the gang leader, Zoiudo, the man who had kidnapped Claudinha. Trembling, Maria Helena handed the phone to me. On the other end, he asked, "Who are you? Are you with the police or something?" I didn't waste time and said, "Get your men out of here now." He tried to talk tough like gangsters always do, but I didn't have time for that. I cut him off. "Your heart rate is now climbing from 100 to 220 beats per minute and rising. If you don't tell your men to leave this place in the next 5 seconds, it will be the last beat of your heart." Someone with him on the line started shouting in a panic, "Do what he says! Do what he says! I don't know what to do. Just listen to him now." Zoiudo, already on the ground, gasping for air and close to passing out, gave the order for his men to retreat. The cars sped off immediately, except for the one with the blown tires, of course. The man on the phone with him, known as Zama, then asked me, "What kind of power did you use on my boss?" "I'm into mediumship and I've never seen anything like this." I replied calmly, "I used the power of your existential insecurity." Then, I turned to Zoiudo and said, "If you or any of your men ever disturb this family again, it will be your last heartbeat, and you'll meet the devil sooner than you think. Do you understand?" Struggling to breathe, he answered, "Yes, sir, I understand. But I noticed something. Zama was a disciple of someone very powerful, someone whose psychic structure I couldn't read. It was clear this would bring us problems soon." After comforting Maria Helena and the children, reassuring them that they wouldn't be bothered again, we prepared to leave. Before we left, the young boy in the house with typical childhood boldness asked, "Are you gods or demons?" I looked at Veronica, who stayed silent but serious, and replied, "It depends. If our drive is to fight bad ideas, we're gods. But if our primary instinct is to destroy people, even bad ones, then we're demons." I knew we couldn't keep going like this. Veronica was losing control, unable to deal with the cruelty of human evil. Her urge for vengeance was consuming her, and it went against the rules of the Eviudims. We had unlimited power of suggestion, especially over the insecure, which was most people, and we could alter the probability of events, making highly unlikely things happen. But we were forbidden from interfering with the collective sphere of reality. We could only act within the individual sphere, person to person. With Veronica's actions, it was only a matter of time before we became famous, and that would lead to our destruction. Maybe this life of helping people isn't viable for us. Tomás de Albuquerque, São Sebastião, September 21st, 2021.
Gods or demons, no one knows. Bruxos move where no